Hello, BookTube. I thought today we'd do another book set. The reason we're doing this is to make the shelf tours a little easier. Some of these sets take up quite a bit of space, and if I did them on a shelf tour, they wouldn't get much attention. So I got an odd little set today. It's by Casanova, and it's interesting because it's translated by Arthur Machen. Now, those of you that are horror or supernatural or fantasy fans may remember Machen as the author of The Great God Pan, which is a novella and considered a classic of the horror fiction genre. Mr. Machen was influential in supernatural fantasy and horror fiction. And I didn't realize as a translator. So he's a Welsh author and mystic. Lived from 1863 to 1947. I believe you can still hear like a BBC radio interview with him, which seems odd for a fellow born during the time of the American Civil War. But there it is. So this is the set. There's 6 volumes. Let me grab the first one. Give you an idea what they look like. Hopefully with the glare. Right there. They are a little hard to see, aren't they? There's the list of them there. So these are the Memoirs of Jacques Casanova de Saint-Gart. It's in 6 volumes. This one is The Venetian Years, the first complete and unabridged English translation by Arthur Machen, illustrated with old engraving, G.P. Putnam and Son, New York, Elliott Books, London. Published in England by Elliott Books Limited, and in America by G.B. Putnam and Sons, and in Canada by Longmans, Green and Company. They don't, let's see how they do the dates. They don't even say a date. Sure, it's in there somewhere. I would hope it is. So anyway, this is, see if we'll give you some ideas. It's illustrated with historic photos, etchings. Yeah. Wouldn't be that historic if it was photos, I don't think. Yeah, right there. So these are the stories of the great lover Casanova. Considered quite risque for the time. Would barely make much of a ripple now, but they're full of historical detail. And these are filled throughout with the historic images. So the 18th century was an age of great adventurers, none of whom is more famous than Giacomo Casanova, born in Venice, but citizen of the world. To all connoisseurs of the 18th century, his memoirs have frequently been a mine of treasure for their wonderfully evocative picture of the period in all its tumultuous variety. Yet these memoirs, that far exceed in interest even such a contemporary classic as Rousseau's Confessions, have never yet been made available in their entirety. This is, in fact, the first translation, based on careful research into all the available texts, that gives the English-speaking public access to all the gusto and humor of the original masterpiece. So, the images in this are 18th century Italian engravings. There's another one. So this one is the Venetian Years. The next one should be from Paris to Vienna. Let's see. Let me get them out of here. Oh, it says Paris in prison. Yeah, okay. So there's that cover. I don't know why it's doing that odd little image back from. It's actually taking the image up from the camera. I love here. I don't know if you can see this. The price on these was $5 when they came out. So now he continues his narrative with the same abounding vitality. They talked about the first one. Still very young, but with fantastic accumulation of experiences in life and in love, he finds himself in Paris. As usual, he is made welcome wherever he goes, and is soon accepted into the glittering court of Louis XV. He is taught French by an author and practices black arts for the benefit of the sensation-seeking ladies of the court. Gets into trouble with the Parisian police, but skillfully evades conviction. And succeeds in painting an unparalleled picture of the delights to be found in Paris in the gayest period in its history. Eventually, Casanova resumes his restless wanderings across Europe and at last returns to Venice. The climax of the second volume comes when he is betrayed to the State Inquisition for possession of illegal books and is thrown into the terrible Leeds prison. Here he languishes for 15 months, constantly making plans of escapes, only to be thwarted every time. At last, however, he is successful, and his daring breakout from this virtually impregnable jail is thrilling and courageous as any prison camp escape in our own time. So, let's see if it says, it just says illustrated by engravings on this one. I tried to avoid the more risque. None of them would really qualify as that big a deal nowadays. So then we go from Paris in prison to the eternal quest. And here we go. And again, it has a list on the back. And again, this one just says illustrated by engravings. It was originally $5. As this book's open, he has returned to Paris after his escape and loses no time in starting a new love affair and relining his pocket by undertaking an adventurous secret mission to Dunkirk, for which the fee is 500 louis. As always, his daily life is crowded with incident and fraught with danger. He is continually being robbed and imprisoned, fighting duels, and in danger of being assassinated. So, again, more adventure for Mr. Casanova. Fewer illustrations in this one. There are some. Ladies with a fancy hat. Yeah, this is really lighter on the illustrations in this one. And yeah, I won't show that one. Alright. So now we go from the Eternal Quest to what? Adventures in the South. Let's see if we can do it without getting quite so much glare. So this is a rare unabridged London edition of the 1894 translation. So that's, and they've added chapters discovered by Arthur Symons as a supplement in bibliography. So here we are. Casanova remains in a mood through the major portion of 600 pages of this 650 pages, this fourth volume of his memoirs. His endless travels take him from Grenoble, where this volume opens, to Avignon, Marseille, Toulon, Genoa, Pisa, Rome, and an encounter with the Pope, Naples, and to most of the other interesting cities of the 18th century, France, Germany, and Italy. As ever, his travels involve him in a constant, seemingly ever-increasing number of romantic interludes with a veritable host of charming mistresses of all nationalities, including the English Agatha. And in Naples, he is prevented in the nick of time. We'll leave it on. We'll leave it there. Find. There's an image. And then we go to London and Moscow for Volume 5. Let's see. Casanova's next stopping place was Berlin, where he met the great eccentric Frederick the Great, whom he asked for an appointment at court. Frederick, strangely enough, seemed to consider him suitable for the post of governor to a corps of noble cadets. This offer was turned down after Casanova had seen the hovel the cadets lived in. A visit to Russia was more enjoyable, and the author was very impressed by the character and intelligence of Catherine the Great, with whom he had a long discussion on the relative merits of the Georgian and Julian calendars, Catherine contending that there would be a revolution if she was rash enough to deprive her subjects of 11 saint days. Very political and logical concern. So continued the wandering, unsettled course of Casanova's life. Many times he was happy with some fair charmer, but always the fatal fear of being bound to anyone drove him on. In his own words, I was impelled by some occult force which it was my whim not to resist. So there's the fifth. And then the final volume, the sixth one, Spanish Passions. At the end of the memoirs, Casanova is 49 and longing returned to Venice after 19 years of wandering. He is settled down in Trieste. We has to wait for 2 years before his banishment was annulled. The narrative breaks off without warning at the end of the chapter, and so end the amazing adventures of the toothless old man of Bohemia. Casanova has become an immortal, and he has left us with an animated and carefully painted picture of 18th century Europe. So this was the final volume of the Arthur Machen translation. Of the memoirs that were the scandal of the age, but are quite a resource for anybody researching that era. And like I say, I knew who Machen was, but I never knew about these books. So when I found them, I had to grab them. I haven't read them all the way through. I dip into them just for fun every now and then. But enjoyable set. I don't know what other translations are out there. I don't think I'd pursue them. I grabbed this because it was obtainable and I ran into a place where it wasn't. It was just languishing on an old bookshelf somewhere. So that is Arthur Machen's translations of the Memoirs of Casanova, translated into English in 1894. Thank you, BookTube.